Hi, I'm Marc Leuthold, and I'm a professor at the State University of New York. And I'm here today to discuss with you glazing. Glazing is the hardest part of the entire ceramics process. You have gone through many steps to make your art from dust, and now you have to glaze it. And this is, for many of us, a make it or break it moment with the work. You can either enhance the work or ruin a piece that you really were very excited about. And so I want to give you some information that might help you make some better decisions when it comes to glazing. First of all, I want to warn you against doing the very rapid, haphazard decision about glazing. I don't think that's a good idea. But what I would like you to do is to think about your art studies before you took ceramics. Before you took ceramics, you took a color and design class and maybe drawing and maybe 3D foundations. And in those classes, you learned about limited palette and color schemes. These are invaluable ideas to help you come up with better glaze solutions. Yves Klein painted all his pieces one color, Yves Klein blue, which by the way is patented. Probably you don't want to do that with all of your pieces. Probably it would be better to not, as I call it, monoglaze. I want you to think about color and glaze in a more sophisticated level, in a more psychological level. You could use complementary colors. Complementary colors are colors that lie on opposite sides of the color wheel. For example, orange and blue, red and green, yellow and purple. When you juxtapose them, you achieve something called simultaneous contrast. Using complementary colors is one possibility. Another is to use double complementary color scheme, and that's where you juxtapose two complementary sets of colors. Another is monochromatic. Monochromatic is where you use shades of the same color. In a moment, I have an example of a tile that was glazed using a monochromatic color scheme. Another one is split complementary. Split complementary is where you might take a color such as blue and you go across on the color wheel, and orange is your complementary of that. But if you move over to red orange and yellow orange, then you have, with the blue, then you have a split complementary color scheme. It's where you go across the color wheel and you just go right and left of the actual complement. And so that's why it's called split complementary. It's maybe a little subtler than the simultaneous contrast or use of complementary color scheme. That would be my best guess at it. Again, a lot of this is subtle and psychological. Another one is analogous color scheme. This is a very interesting one too, and it's where you group 3 or 4 colors that lie next to each other on the color wheel and use them as your palette. For example, red, orange, orange, yellow, orange, and yellow. If you use those colors in a composition, then that would be an example of an analogous color scheme. The other thing that I want to alert you to is glazes have texture. Texture is very important with a sculptural object. When you are not monoglazing and you're incorporating many glazes in your solution, consider contrasting texture. Very often it's interesting to juxtapose glazes next to each other. For example, you can juxtapose a matte glaze next to a shiny glaze, next to a matte glaze, next to a shiny glaze, etc. And that can create a very interesting effect on a sculptural piece. And one thing I want to encourage you to consider, and that many students don't, is that often shiny glazes are not optimal on a complex sculptural form. They are very attractive on a simple thrown symmetrical form, but on a complex sculptural form, a lot of that shininess can be very distracting, whereas a matte glaze can often be more interesting. And for some reason, a lot of the students avoid the matte glazes, which I think is unfortunate. Please remember that you have the option to exercise your poetic or artistic license when selecting your glazes. Again, I'm going to mention Yves Klein, who sculpted many figures, and they were always blue. The skin was blue. And of course, you need to do it in a sensible way so that your viewers know that your decisions are convincingly intentional. But please consider the interesting effects that can happen from picking unusual solutions with your glazing. A wonderful example is the painting by Matisse, The Woman with the Green Stripe. She has a green stripe down the middle of her face. And then he did, it's an amazing painting. On the back, let's say this is the side of the face with the warm color. In the background, he has the cool color. So it's cool, warm. So this is what I'm talking about, juxtaposing warm and cool. But what that achieved in that flat surface is more of a sense of 3D dimensionality. And it's just brilliant when you look at it. And of course, it's all incorrect, because no woman that I have seen has that kind of pigmentation in their skin and face. But Matisse exercised his artistic license for his expressive purposes. Now remember, if you did slip decoration on your object, you need to use a translucent or semi-translucent glaze on the form to show your slip decoration. At the same time though, if you have reconsidered and don't like your slip decoration, if you put an opaque glaze on top of it, you can get rid of it. So that's a nice way to erase anything that you have come to regret in terms of your surface decoration. You may change your mind with your glazing, or you may have problems with your glazing if your glazing cracks a lot and starts peeling and chipping off, or if you just realize that you picked the wrong colors. No problem. All you have to do is wash the glaze off. But the piece is going to be saturated with water once you wash it off, and you will not be able to glaze it for, I would say, 12 to 24 hours. 24 hours is better. So if you wash it off, you can't make a last-minute fix. You have to wait a day to glaze it. But there's no problem with that. It does waste a little bit of glaze, which is your money, but as far as I'm concerned, you and your art are worth it.